All right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to try to solve Madlibs. And I have not solved this in a very long time, so we will try to solve this together. So Madlibs, in this exercise, we're going to be handling input events. So probably a form that when I start typing in stuff, it'll fill out something, it'll have some sort of event. And more complex component data flow by creating a Madlib UI. Much of the app has been scaffolded, and we need to connect a few things together to complete the flow of data and rendering the appropriate HTML. Looks like when we bring this down and we npm install all the packages, we're going to need to figure out how the flow works. And this is oftentimes what's going to happen. You're going to come into a brand new app that you've never seen but already exists, and you need to figure out how all of it works together. We'll figure that out together. So the data structure, okay, let's just bring this down while we read. I'm gonna check out to a new branch. So git checkout -b. -b is for the new branch. John's solution for India Platoon. And then I'm going to npm install. Now you'll notice when I cloned this down, there was no node modules folder. And the node modules holds what?
Your support packages for your application.
All the support packages, all the JavaScript underneath the hood. We didn't bring that down because there's a million files in there. Maybe actually a million files in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into package.json. It will look inside of dependencies and dev dependencies and install all of those things and all the necessary other libraries that these things require. So I'm going to run npm install. And as this is going, let's take a look at this, continue reading through this README. All right. So we have to figure out how the flow of data is going to work. The data structure that drives the UI is Madlibs, madlibs.js. To complete your objectives, you will not need to modify this file. So let's just take a look at this one to get started. Madlibs, so everything's under source. Madlibs folder, there's a madlibs.js. All right, so there's an export default. So from this file, I want to export all of this stuff. Okay, it looks like it's an array of objects. Each object has title, get word, get text, words, title, get word. Okay, so this is one object inside of here. It looks like I have a few keys: title, get word, get text, and a bunch of words as well. A Madlib object has three properties that you'll utilize: the title, the words, and the get text. So let's just kind of see where we get started. What's the main entry point into my app? What is the file that we need to pay attention to the most? App.js. So when I run npm start, all right, looks like right now all I've got is this Madlibs that's grayed out right over here. Let's take a look at how this is working. We just go line by line. Number one, we're bringing in React and the component library from there, from the React node module. We're bringing in some CSS. We've got the word form that we have to take a look at in a little bit. We need to do, can't I stop this? We've got a story, we've got a Madlib, and we've got this app. Okay, so right off the bat, we have app holds some state. What is state? Yep, so state is nothing more than a giant, well, in JavaScript, it's an object. It's a hash of stuff that this particular class needs to know. So it needs to know all the Madlibs, and it needs to know a selected Madlib. Looks like we have a on input change. It looks like this is probably an event handler because on word input change, oh, it's right there. It takes in a key, a value, and an index. And then we've got this weird thing called a spread operator, which we'll go over in just a little bit. Essentially what's happening here is I need to create new state. I need to overwrite the state inside of this app. So instead of copying everything over where I'm just like Madlibs is equal to this.state.madlibs, and then doing selected madlib is equal to this.state.selected madlib. Instead of typing out all the content inside of here, what we have is what's called a spread operator. The spread operator basically takes the content of this.state, like imagine like sticking a knife inside of a jar of peanut butter. I'm grabbing the contents and I'm just spreading it across a piece of bread. So I'm just grabbing all the contents inside of this.state and like basically spreading it all out. I'm making a copy of that. These two, this line 15, and lines 16 and 17 are identical. They do exactly the same thing. So new state dot is a actual JavaScript object. We are essentially finding the key called selected madlibs. We're taking the words at this particular index and pretty much doing the same. I don't know what this means. We're going to figure this out later. And then we set the state of new state, okay? And then the render here, we have an H1, a word form, a story, okay. Let's take a look at what we've got here. All right, so wordform.js should render text inputs for all words in the array. Use the label property in the word object for the value of the input's placeholder attribute. These text inputs should cause that. Change occurs and pass in. So let's just solve this first one here. The wordform.js should render text inputs for all word objects in the array. So we've got word form. And notice that what we've done here is we've componentized this particular thing. We've said that this has functionality that's probably so big that it needs to go into its own individual component. So word form doesn't exist on app.js, so I'm going to scroll up to the top. Import word form from components, madlib word form, wordform.js. So as of right now, I've got a word form that extends from component. It has a onInputChange function that is all of this, and it fires off that. Okay. So right now, it looks like we need to enter a word, and the word is not. We need to have a text box that takes care of you entering stuff, and we don't have anything yet. So maybe we'll just have a div that says H1 for this is the word form, just to see something show up on the screen. All right, so this is the word form. Before there was nothing because it was just an empty div, and right now I just typed in this is the word form. The word form should render text inputs for all the word objects in the array. Use the label property. So it looks like when you do Madlibs, who has not played Madlibs? All right, so in the case that you haven't played Madlibs, Madlibs is a kind of like a kid's game. At least I played it when I was a kid. I do. 50 Shades of Madlibs. Okay, so essentially what this is it's a story, but oh boy. That is real. Maybe we'll change this for the recording, but for now, why not? Okay, so this is a story with words taken out. It's generally a game with two people. One person says, give me a verb ending in S, and the other person will say it, and then you'll write that word right over here. And give me a body part, and I'll put it over here, and then another body part. Okay. It's usually supposed to be like noun, adjective, adverb, yeah, those are the only things I know in the English language. Proper noun, things like that. And then it's mostly for kids. So they're like, give me a verb, poop. Okay, so that's like a funny verb that you're going to put in there, and then you create a ridiculous story at the very end. So it looks like this form right over here, we need to render text inputs for all the word objects in the array. So all the things that we need to fill out. So plural noun, regular noun, adjective, adverb, we need to fill all of those out. So these text inputs should call the onInput change in word form when a change event occurs, and then pass that into the appropriate arguments for that. So if we take a look inside of Madlibs, madlibs.js, we have all of these words. So we have a particular Madlib. Madlib has a words attribute, and the words attribute keeps track of all the things that you need. Like you need one, noun one, last name one, describing word one, plural body part, plural noun. These are the things that you have to have a form for. So if I take a look inside of app.js, my thought is, am I passing down, oh, it looks like I actually have words already, which is really nice. So let's just console log words, this.props.words. So within here, I'm going to do console.log this.props.words.
Go
ahead.
I was going to ask why the console log.
Sure. So what Mike was saying yesterday is that when you have a class, there's a lifecycle method. We'll cover this more on Tuesday, but there's a method called render. This render returns something out to the screen. You can run any JavaScript code that you want between the render and the return. So I can literally just do console log hello. I can create a for loop and print out the numbers from 1 to 5. I can do whatever JavaScript that I want between render and return. Once you get to the return, this becomes JSX, and the JSX is what gets rendered out to the screen. So if you need to do any sort of calculations or any sort of getting some data before you interpolate it down here, you do that all between the render and the return. My thought process here is I need to keep track of, I need to get all the words. The words come from app.js, it's getting passed in, so it's already kind of hooked up for me, which is nice. And I just want to see what words looks like. So I'm just going to console log this.props.words. Because app.js is calling a component called word form, it's passing in this particular prop. These are just arguments when you were creating a new class inside of, remember when we had class person? We had the def, init, self, first name, last name. And then you had that self.first name equals first name, etc. When you created a new instance of a person, you did person with John Young. You're passing in 2 arguments. This is the way that they do it inside of JSX. So person refers to word form. So I'm creating a new instance of this word form component, and I'm passing in these particular variables, which is the same thing as this over here. So let's take a look at what this.props.words looks like. And the way that we access the things that are passed in is this.props in the child class. If I go here and I open this up, I have an array. The array has 9 things inside of it, and each one of those things is a key and a label. So if I wanted to get to the first thing and I wanted to get to the key, I do this.props.words at 0, and then I get the key from there in square brackets. So we've got that. Let's see. I should render the text inputs for all the objects in the word array. Use the label property for the placeholder attribute. Okay, so we need text inputs. So let's look up HTML text inputs. First thing here, it looks like input type is text, ID is name, okay. And this shows up over here. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to probably need to create another function. Maybe I'll call this create all inputs. I know I'm going to need to create an array of these types of inputs. So I know I'm going to have I'm going to need to create an array first. So maybe let output equal an empty array. I know I'm going to return that later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a quick iteration for let I equal 0. I is less than this.props.words.length I plus plus. Let word equal this.props.word at I. I'm going to do output.push input where the key is equal to word.key. Actually, let's just, before I do anything, let's just do this.props word at 0. I've got one object. I've got the key and the label. The label is what's going to show up to the screen. That's the thing that I want to see. So it's like noun 1 and then a text box. The key is the way that I'm going to access it a little bit later. So I've got an array, and it's empty for now. I'm going to iterate over each one of those words, and I need to create one of these weird-looking label things. So any idea on how to do that? Keep in mind that the two things that I have is a key and a label. You can. Yep.
We just created 9 boxes.
You created 9 boxes? Okay. So I wouldn't hard code as much as possible. So you could create them all right over here. I'm going to create another function and just put them in over here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's input type is going to be text. We know that. ID is going to be maybe label, maybe key. I think key might be good here. The name is going to be name. Maybe we'll get rid of all of this here. And then maybe placeholder is equal to word.label. Let's see if this shows up correctly. I'm going to grab, I'll just do right over here, create all inputs, and I will call it. Okay, it's not great, but it is all there. Sure. Yeah. All right. So let's review what we did. The README here asks me to go inside of word form, grab all the words, and create little like text areas where you can enter all the things that you want to enter. We know that each one of these Madlibs will have things that they're looking for. Those are called words, and it's an array of objects. Each one has a key, and each one has a label. The key is the way that we're going to grab the stuff later. Once you fill out the form, we're going to grab that using the key. The label is what's going to show up to the screen. What we've done is that inside this render, we're just going to call this.createAllInputs. It's a method that lives inside this class. So inside of this class called word form, I'm going to call create all inputs and actually run it right away. Create all inputs is going to open up a array that's just going to be empty. It's going to be populated and be returned at the end. I'm iterating over all of the words inside the props that were passed down. I'm grabbing each individual word so I don't have to do this.props.words at I and then .key. So this is just a little bit of a shorthand. So I grab each individual word, and I'm going to push in an input that's going to have the type is going to be text, because you have to be able to type in text. The ID, the way that we're going to, I think it's actually name. Actually, I'll bring it back to the key. The way that we're going to refer to it, once it's submitted, it's going to be word.key, and a placeholder up here is going to be word.label.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's, why not? Let's do that plus a BR and self-closing tag. So if all goes well, and I refresh this page, the break is not happy.
The forward slash.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know if I can do that.
I think you have to close. You have to close tags.
Okay, maybe I'll close this tag, and then we'll do a BR like that, BR slash. It's still unhappy with me. It doesn't like that.
You can only take one. Maybe the push back. Wait, you might have to break and then close break. Yeah. I mean,
No, BR is a self-closing tag as well.
But I think in reality, outside of this, where self-closing tags and you all. Oh.
It's still unhappy with me. The whole thing in a div? Why not?
Usually they only take one. No, so I need to do it. That's right. It's got to be one element. It's like that vendor.
Ah, okay. So it looks like this works. So we've created an array of inputs. And now when I type stuff in, I want to be able to capture that as well. And it looks like from app.js, and there's an on-input change. This on-input change, when fired off, will actually execute this, which refers to app on-word input change. Let's get rid of this for right now. And let's just console log key, console.log value, and console.log index. It looks like on input change is expecting 3 things, so let's just print those 3 things out. So that's passed from the parent, which is app.js, into the word form child component. There's an event handler that's being passed as a prop that needs a call whenever this is fired off. So within this input, I think I'll do this on change. I'm going to capture the event. And then I'm going to fire off this dot on, what is it called? Onward input. What's this? On input change. I'm going to pass in the key, value, and index. So the key, which is, I think it's just word.key. The entire event as the value, and then the index as I. So if all goes well, I just type in the noun, N-O-U-N, not read value of undefined in word form JS line 6. Word form JS line 6. It says I cannot read value of undefined. So event.currentTarget.value doesn't work.
It's because we
Matter function for output on input change. Find this.
I could, let me see. What am I missing? Event and index. This on input change. This stuff props up. Why am I doing it twice? Why am I not just going straight up? Yeah, let's console log the event. You're right. Let's see if this works. So if I type in just F, it's just 0. So whenever I type in 0, I'm just getting that entire event. That's not what I expected. Any thoughts?
I had this problem.
What did we just try? Do we make on input change a background function? Everything. But I don't know how that would change because it's biting from.
Is it value category input?
Let's see, then target that value. Okay, so it's broken because it cannot get the value of undefined. So it's so we're actually not at the app yet. So whenever I change this input, I'm grabbing the event, passing it into the event has to be the first.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's an integer. It was just getting 0.
Oh, it's just getting 0 because that is literally. Oh, you're right. You're right. There it is.
Another thing that pushed it. Wow, God.
Okay. Now we know. So it looks like whenever we have some sort of an event handler, the first thing that needs to be passed in is the event. The second thing, let's see if we can get access to the key, which is something different, and let's see if we can get access to the index. Let's get access to the key. Let's
So
get
that event is kind of like self.
the
It has
event
to
is
be-
the event captures the entire thing that just happened. So you can kind of think of it as self.
Yeah, so it has to be first.
That does,
Expects
yeah,
it.
I believe so. I thought you could pass it in separately, but let's take a look. We've got F. So F is the thing that I entered, so it captured what I said. This is the value that we want to insert it at. And then finally, this is the index of the thing that we typed in. So let's say J. J is going to be first name 1, and that's going to be at the first index of the array, which is kind of cool. So it's pretty much already set up for us. Let's see what's next. Oh, we need to pass it back up to the top. So we have this on input change that it's kind of redundant. We don't really need this because it's not doing anything right now. Before it was just calling straight up to the props anyway, so why don't we just call it straight from here? So we'll just do this dot props dot on input change. We'll pass the event in first, pass in the key second, and the index third. We can get rid of this altogether. From there, so let's look up to the on input change inside of app.js. It's on word input change, which is on input change. It's going to take in a key, value, and index. Let's see. So I'm going to look key, value, and index. Key, value, and index. Let's see if this works. So we're going to pass in, we're going to console log that key, that value, and that index. Hopefully this will work exactly the same as before. So if I just type in F, it's noun 1, F, and 0. So we got the key, the value, and the index. So it looks like it is working the way that we expect. Now if I were to uncomment all of this, let's see if this works. New state, selected map. Let's see if this works. I don't know. Looks like it is updating the state successfully. But let's see how it's doing that. So it looks like whatever I type in, type of candy, Snickers, it's automatically taking what I type in over here inside of the text box and filling it into the story. But let's see how it's doing that. We figured out the word form. The story is another thing that's showing up. So the story is a component that we find, where is that? Input story from madlibs.story, story.js. Story.js is a class component that just renders some stuff out to the screen. Should we make this a functional component? Yeah, why not? I don't know how to do that.
Actually, I have a question. It's taking a prop. It's taking a prop.
Yep.
So, if it's
Yeah,
a
so it,
functional component, will it be able, like, so, hold on. So state, we use the class
yes.
for state, right? Now, if it's taken in prop, if we change it to a functional component, will that change?
No.
Oh, really?
No. Because right now, if you take a look inside of story, all it's doing is just returning out something that's passed down. It doesn't need to keep track of state. It just needs to be passed in something and then display it out. So whenever you have a component that just displays something else, you can go ahead and change that to a functional component. Maybe for the sake of simplicity, we'll just keep it like this, but you can change this to a functional component. So it looks like story just prints out this.props.text. This.props.text is equal to this.state.selectedMadlib.getText.
The
Okay.
second part, we have to display different methods.
Okay.
I think it's part of that same class.
Yeah, let's just keep the class then. So go ahead.
So Facebook's official position on it is, well, I guess it's MIT now, but they say new code. If you write new code, use functions. If you're using old code, keep it as a class unless you're fixing a bug and you're rewriting everything anyway. Then use the function. Otherwise, just leave it as a class.
Wait. So,
Basically, it's if you're writing something new, adhere to the new standards. Otherwise, keep it the old way.
so with the new standard, are those the people were talking about hooks
Yeah.
and stuff like that? So you would, okay.
All right, so story has some text. The way that one works is you go inside of this.state, which is up here. There's a selected Madlibs key, and the selected Madlib has a particular get text function. And this get word thing is going to be, basically it's already hooked up for you. So this puts out a bunch of stuff out to the screen. This one gets the word based off of what you have inside of state. Now the last thing that we've had is we're going to create a select dropdown that allows a user to select the Madlib to play. We're going to map through this.state.madlibs, gather the titles, and create those as dropdown options. Using the onChange event, set the selected Madlib to the one that you selected. Okay, so this one's pretty simple. Let's just copy and paste this. I'm going to put this right here and just comment it out for now. So right now we want to create a select dropdown with options.
There's the part to the first one.
Okay.
Display it only once all.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me get rid of all this then. All right, so the story.js component should display the value returned in getText, but only have this component display when all the word objects have values. Let's take a look at madlibs.js. All right, so there's a getText function that returns out this.getWord noun 1. So let's take a look at getWord, which is right up here. It takes in some sort of key, and if this.words.findWord, you're going to return it, you're going to return the value. Otherwise, you're not going to return anything. The idea is, where am I keeping all the words that I've typed in so far? Some of them are undefined and some of them are not undefined. So let's take a look. Selected Madlibs. All right, so we have to evaluate more carefully what's going on inside of onward input change. So we're able to capture everything, which is nice. So const new state is equal to a copy of the old state. That's the spread operator. It's taking all the contents that were there before and spreading it across right here. New state has something called selected madlibs.words at a particular index. Okay, so new state, which is a copy of the old state, has selected madlibs, which is the one that you've selected, which for all intents and purposes right now is just this first one. The first one has something called words on there. at that particular index. Oh, I get it. You're accessing each individual word, and you're taking the old contents of it, which is key 1, label 1, and you're also adding in value at the very end. So you want to make sure, you only want to display story when all the words have values inside of there. Right now, they don't all have it inside of there. So I think this one's pretty simple. Inside of app.js, I only want to display this if the stories, if this.state.selected Madlibs words all have values inside of there. That's what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to create a quick function and wrap this whole thing in a curly brace. So maybe we'll create a function called isStoryComplete. I'm going to run that. If that evaluates, then I'll fire this off, and it's going to be this.isStoryComplete. So I'll create a method called isStoryComplete, which is going to iterate over, for let I equal 0, I is less than this.state.selected madlib .words.length I++. Oops. Basically, it's if there is no value, you're going to return false. And then at the very end of this whole for loop, you're going to return true. Does that make sense? So you only want to display it out to the screen when all of these have that label inside of there. Okay, let's see if this works. So as of right now, there's no Madlib, which makes sense because all of them don't have the value. So if I just do noun, John, young, word, butts, apples, describing word. Describing word is an adjective, right? Delicious, soda, and Snickers. At that point, it all comes out. Show portraits by John Young, one print. The butts in the portraits seem to follow you around the room. And this is how Madlibs is played when you're a child. All right, this last little bit before we take a break, there's one thing that's remaining. The one thing is that we're only selecting one Madlib, and that's the one at the very top of the page of export default. And we want to get to the second one, which is down over here called bad dog. So what we're going to do, am I not done with this one?
No, there's a third one.
Yeah, there's a third one, yeah. I want to be able to select each one. So finally, I'm going to create a select dropdown that allows you to select which Madlib to play, and you're going to gather the titles and have those as the dropdown options using the onChange. Set the selected object to that selected Madlib. Okay. So right now we are hard coding all the selected Madlib. So maybe we can do we ever need this.state.madlibs, this.state.madlibs? Nope. So I think I can get rid of this altogether. And I'm just going to set this to null to start. At this point, I'm going to have a drop-down Madlibs, and then maybe I'll have another conditional statement. This.state.selected Madlib. If there's something there, then okay. If it's not there, then we'll do the create dropdown of Madlibs and invoke it. Otherwise, don't do anything. So basically, I'm saying if the state has something already selected for the selected Madlib, then don't do anything. Otherwise, create the dropdown of Madlibs. So I'm going to create that dropdown. So it's def. Oh no, that's wrong language. Create dropdown of Madlibs. Same thing as before, let output equal a giant array, return the output, and I need to create a bunch of selects with options. So I know I'm going to do something with for loop, for let I equal 0, I is less than, oh, this is this dot state dot madlibs. Oops. That's where it is. Let's grab this and bring it down. All right, so we want to create a select dropdown that gathers titles and displays those. Okay, so I need to create a, actually, I have no idea. How do I create a bunch of options? Select, dropdown, HTML. All right, so there's a select tag. All right, so looks like there's a select tag with a bunch of options. So I'm just going to grab this, but I want to try it myself first. It looks like you wrap the whole thing with a select, and then each individual option. Okay, that makes sense to me. Cool. Pardon? It looks like I need to wrap this whole thing with the select. Yeah, I think we have to. Let's say output is equal to that. Oh. Oh God, this is not great. All right, so it looks like I am going to do. I'm going to interpolate here and also interpolate there. Don't need these anymore. Output dot n or plus equals that. I'm just going to copy and paste the old answer that I have, because this is gross. I create Madlib out down. Let output equal that. Same thing as before. Output.push value equals I, and then you have the title, and then the whole thing needs to be wrapped in a select, isn't it? Let's say that we have a Madlibs. We'll have an H2 here for select a Madlib. And what we'll do is copy and paste. We'll create a select. The select, when this fires off, we will do it's old school. So when I select something, I'm going to fire off this .change Madlib section, which we'll do in just a little bit. We have a select on the outside, and then we have all the drop downs on the inside. The inside is we're gonna create an output array. We're gonna push in all these out options that we're able to select and return that out to the screen. The last thing we need to do, we need to have this method called change Madlib selection. And I think this needs to have that event, which means we need to create the event. And we're just going to do this dot set state of selected Madlib is going to be Madlibs at event.target.value. Let's see if this works. So right now, there is nothing. Fantastic. Let's take a look inside of our console. Yeah. Cannot read property length of undefined on app.js line 37. This.state.madlibs. Oh, Madlibs. I have it as a capital L. It's stupid. Let's change that. All right, so cannot read property 0 of undefined on line 38. This.state that capital L again. And cannot read words of null on 58. Line 58, where is words? Words is this.state the selected madlib words. What's that? Okay. So maybe we'll do, we'll just keep it as the first one for now. All right, so these are a bunch of warning, but that's okay. Say if I want to choose, okay, we got atrocious art show, bad dog, and breaking news. Maybe if we choose bad dog. Will any of this change? This is supposed to change, no? Okay, so let's take a look. So we have change Madlib selection, takes in an event. Let's see, did we actually select this Madlib correctly? So maybe we'll do a console.log. Actually, let's just do inside of here, console.log, this.state.selected Madlib. Right now, it is an object of atrocious art show. If this works correctly, I should be able to change this and bad dog will show up. And bad dog is not showing up, so we're not setting the state correctly. So maybe let's console log event.target.value right here. And let's comment this out for right now. Let's see. All right, so we've got an object, we've got a social art show. If I choose another one, bad dog, it's not doing anything. So let's chase this down. We've got the on change here. When that happens, we grab the event, we pass it into, I think we had to pass in the E over here as well. Cool, that's what it was. If you have to capture the event and you need to pass it in, because that's what this is expecting over here. So if I change this back to the way it was, I believe we're finished at this point. So atrocious art show, bad dog, you'll see that some of these things already changed. Breaking news, whatever. Let's just put in some things. And at that point, we've got the other Madlibs as well.
If you change it right now, you reset the value.
Yep. Okay. This one's actually pretty difficult.
Yeah, I was,
for a variety of reasons. One of them is that it's also written incorrectly. It expects the event in a different place. And then I think I need to rewrite some of the instructions because it's not terribly clear.
yeah, like